Hey everybody, it's Kate. So I'm super excited because today I'm going to start filming my Tilda doll series. So if you've seen the supplies video, this is the next part. I'm going to start with the construction of the doll and prepping my fabrics and whatnot like this. So I'm actually on the floor of my craft room right now because I have very little usable desk space, but I'm hoping to remedy that coming up soon. So yeah, the first thing I've done is wash, dry, and iron all my fabrics. And then the next thing I'm going to do is actually square them up. Let me move this up just a little bit. Yeah. So you'll notice here how this isn't straight and it's real like frayed and whatnot. We need to correct that in order to cut the skirts. If you just line the edges up exactly, it's not going to come out straight. So you actually need to, when they unroll the fabric and cut it off the bolt, it's going to be crooked, always. So we need to square it up. So what I've done after I washed, dried, and ironed it is, what you do to do this properly is meet the selvage edges. So the selvage edges are the ones that are printed, and then across from that is another edge that's a little thicker that won't unravel. So you meet those two edges and then fold it again so that you end up with a fold here and then a fold here and these open edges at the top. And so I've got it lined up on my craft mat, and the edge we want to make sure is straight is this one here so that we get a square edge when I do the cutting. If you do not have a craft mat and a rotary cutter and ruler like I'm going to use here, I would just get a ruler and use a pencil or something to mark it and then go ahead and cut it that way so that you've got square edges. So let me get on that right quick. I'm going to kind of come underneath my camera to my phone. That's how technical we are around here, so that I can meet it up. So I'm going to cut it off right here to get rid of all this craziness. So I'm just going to line it up, and we want to measure once and cut twice. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm just exactly right here down along the bottom. And then I'm going to square this up. Okay, so now we've got a perfectly square edge to measure and cut from. Okay, so I am actually making 2 Tilda dolls. So I'm going to need 2 10-inch skirts out of each one of these pieces of fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those now while I've got this laid out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to put this down. And then I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I'm going to line it up and chop it. Oop. Okay, it's got a couple little strings there. Okay, perfect. So now we've got one 10-inch skirt ready to go. See? So it's the entire length of the fabric. It's perfectly square. And all we've got to do is chop these little selvage edges off here and then make our seam for our skirt, and it's ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to cut 2 10-inch skirts out of this one and 2 out of my blue fabric, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about cutting the fabric for the body of the doll and the bodice and sleeves of the doll as well. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, just to make sure I'm being real clear about my instructions on how we're squaring up the fabric and cutting off the selvage edges. So here's the second piece, the blue piece that I've squared off, and I've got it folded. Here's a fold. Here's the selvage edges. So I've cut my second 10-inch skirt. So all I'm going to do is take the fabric and turn it this way. I'm going to line it up and chop this part off right here, so that we've, again, gotten rid of those selvage edges and at that point we'll have our skirts ready to sew together. So let me chop that off right quick. I'm hoping my little kitty will come into frame here at some point. She's really beautiful. And her name is Teeny. And since I'm on the floor, she's super interested in what I'm doing. Okay, so there's our skirt. And I also want to make sure I'm clear about how many skirts I'm making. There are going to be 3 skirts on each doll. So one of the dolls, it's going to be the blue, primarily blue. So the bodice of the dress, the top skirt will be the blue, and the next skirt will be this Sybil something white, and then the next skirt will be the cream colored sheet I bought at Walmart that I showed in my supplies video. And so the second doll will be mostly the white, or they call it white, but it's cream, y'all. It's cream. And so the bodice and the top skirt of this doll, the second doll, will be cream, and the second skirt will be blue, and then the third, the cream sheet. So I hope that makes sense. And then, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go ahead and pile my skirts up here. So I've got 2 of each. My sheet is actually in the washing machine right now, so I'm not going to show you that. It's just more of the same. I'm going to fold it up and chop it off. I'm actually probably going to try to take advantage of the hems that are already on the sheet. So I'm going to cut from the bottom edge of the sheet, probably just 1 cut, because that'll give me enough length to have 2 more skirts out of, and I'll be able to take advantage of the hem on the bottom of the sheet. So I'm also going to do the same squaring up process on my body fabric. I don't think I did that last time, so I think this is going to work a little better. This fabric no longer has selvage edges because of the way I cut it last time, but I'm still going to need to square it up. So I'm going to do that. And then when we come back, I'm going to show you how I cut my strips, how I determine the size of the strips for the body. All right. Okay, I'm back. I've got my body fabric squared up, and we're ready to start cutting the pieces for the doll body. So when you fold the fabric the way I've spoken about, it's going to give you 4 layers. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what I need to know is the width of the fabric I need to cut. And it looks like what I'm going to end up doing is cutting 6-inch strips off each of my pieces of fabric. So I'm going to need 2 doll body layers. So there's 2 right there. And then I'm also going to need 2 layers for the legs and the arms. So as you can see, if I cut a 6-inch piece, I'll get 2 layers for the body, and then 2 layers each for the leg and the arm out of this piece of fabric. So let's try that 6 inches out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see how I'm always counting twice? Because I am really good at cutting my fabric the wrong way. And the reason I'm cutting 6 inches is because I need to have room to trace around the pattern and room enough for the, what do you call that? Seam allowance. Okay? See, I'm counting a 3rd time because I want to be sure. Okay. Now this fabric is a little thicker, and I don't think I got all the way through on that first go. Let's see. Very nice. Okay, so to make it a little easier to see what I was talking about, let me lay this out so y'all can tell. Okay. So, here's 2 pieces for my body. So I'm going to cut that off about there. And then here, again, 2 more pieces, see, for my arm and my leg. So I'm going to cut, just like I did, 6-inch strips out of the pattern fabric, because I'm actually going to make the doll. So this part's going to be skin. This part is going to be pattern fabric, because to me, I don't want to make the whole body and the legs skin, because when you lift her skirt up, she looks naked. And I don't like that. It doesn't look right to me. So I'm actually going to make all of this part and this part down to, down to here is going to be pattern fabric. And then here to here is going to be skin. And then this is going to be her little boot. And so I've got my little pattern marked, skin, pink, because I used it last time and made her body was pink. So this will be pattern and skin and boot. And then obviously skin, pattern, so that she looks like she's got some little bloomers on, because the pattern fabric is going to come all the way down, not quite to her knees. I hope that makes sense. And then this bottom part, I've got that blue mark there, is going to be skin fabric. Oop. And this top part is going to be pattern. All right. So I'm going to cut my strips and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. So now I'm going to start, oop, my camera's shaking a little bit. Now I'm going to start cutting the widths of the fabric for assembling the doll body. So I've cut my 6-inch strips here of each one of the fabrics for the body of the dolls. And the reason I've cut them all at 6 inches is because I'm going to need to sew them together end to end to make the doll come out like what I want. So if they're all the same width, that makes it a lot easier and a lot neater. So what I'm going to start with is the head of the doll. So we want a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If my cat would stop. Watch out, Nene. Okay. Let me focus this right quick. Okay, y'all can see this dotted line here. That represents the seam of the bodice. So I am going to place this 1/4 of an inch to allow me a seam allowance from the edge of my skin fabric. Okay. If you are a beginner, you might want to consider a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but I started as a quilter. I've always used a 1/4 inch, and so that's what I use. So for the construction of the body of the doll, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to line that up. So I've got this line is 1/4 of an inch over the edge of this fabric. I'm going to leave myself some extra room here for the head of the doll. And so what I'm going to end up with is 2 4 by 6 inch pieces of fabric for the head of the doll. So there's that. Okay. So there's her head. Now the rest of this is going to be patterned, so I'll cut that from the pattern fabric. So while I've got the skin fabric out, I'm going to do the same thing for the legs and the arms. Okay, so this is going to be boot, so that's going to be pattern fabric, and from this point up is going to be pattern fabric as well. So I only need this much of the skin fabric. So I've got me, there's 2 dotted lines here. This is going to be my line for my boot. So I'm going to line that up 1/4 of an inch away. And then I also need a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here, because this is my line for my her little bloomers or whatever. So that looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pretty close to 5 inches. Let's have a look here. I think I'm actually going to do 2, 3, 4 3/4, because that's going to give me my 1/4 inch seam allowance here and my 1/4 inch seam allowance here. So I'm going to pull that back out, line it up. Okay, so there's enough for 2 little sets of the skin part of the legs. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the arms. I'm just going to need probably just a couple of inches for the arms because it's just a little short skin bit there. So I'm going to pull my fabric back this way so that I'm lined up. So we're going to need a minimum of 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here. So that looks like it's going to be just about 2 3/4 inches there. So I'm going to pull that out. Okay, so there's my skin part of my arms. Okay. So now I'm going to do the pattern. So here are my strips for that. And look here, I didn't cut off my selvage edges. Scandalous. So scandalous. So I'm going to do that right quick. I'm sure y'all are looking at the back of my head. Sorry, y'all. Okay. So then I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave myself 1/4 inch. I'm going to come down to here. Leave myself another 1/4 inch. So that looks like it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 3/4 inches. So you guys get the gist here. You just need to, you know, use your seam allowances. You'll need 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here to end up with the seam being right. And because all the fabrics are the same width, you just need to sew them end to end, and it'll make laying out and tracing your pieces, your doll pieces, a lot easier. So we'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I've got my little individual pieces cut, and I'm hoping this will make a little better sense the way I've got it laid out here. So all I'm going to do is sew this piece to this piece, and then this one, this one, this one, and then this one to this one, and when it comes out, then I'll be able to trace around each of the body parts, and it will be laid out like I want it. So there's her little, you know, here's the body. Well, I've used 2 different fabrics here, but you get the drift. Her head, her bodice, her little bloomers, her leg part, you know, and then her little boot, and then here's the sleeve and the arm. So what I've done here is kind of show, this is where I'm gonna seam, and I'm going to use, like I said, 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm not going to use pins. I just did this so I could show you. If you are a beginner, you probably should use pins, and I would do them just like this so that the fabrics don't slide back and forth up and down. This pinning them this way will keep them from doing that when you're feeding them through the machine. Okay, so but I just pin these together like this to show you what the approximately 1/4 inch seam allowance will look like. And then once we sew them together and open them up, see, we'll have our perfect little sleeve and our little hand there. So I'm going to take all these to the sewing machine, and we'll get them sewed together. Okay, so I'm here at my sewing machine, and this will be just the last part of our video today because I talk too much. I just wanted to show y'all a fast way to sew these pieces. So I've got this one already loaded into my machine, and then I've got this one here waiting behind it, and theoretically I would have all my pieces lined up behind it, and then you can do what's called chain stitching. So I've got my stitch width set on about, or length, excuse me, set on about 2.5, because that looks pretty good to me. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sew down the length of my fabric here, and my foot here is actually measured to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So as long as I keep my fabrics lined up with the edge of my foot, I'm in good shape. So the part of this that I actually wanted to show y'all is that you don't have to take this out of the sewing machine. You can actually just line up the next piece right behind it and just keep on sewing. This is called, I think it's called chain stitching or something like that. And then when you pull it out of the back of the machine, you just snip this little piece off that one, and there you go. You're ready. And now the only thing you want to do after this is when you take your little pieces off the machine, you want to iron it just like it is right now. Okay, that's called setting your stitches. So iron it just like it is, and then you're going to open it up and turn it this way, and then you're going to press your seam allowances open. Okay, that'll create less bulk when you're getting ready to construct your doll. And it'll also make a cleaner, neater join between the pieces. Duh. Okay, so makes sense. So iron it this way, open it up upside face down, and then press your seam allowances open. Okie dokie, I think that's going to be about it for today because I talked too much. So what we'll do on the next video, I'll come back and have all my pieces together, and we will then start tracing and cutting out our doll, and then we'll start putting her together. So thank y'all so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help any way I can. You are welcome to send me a YouTube message or email me. I'll leave that information in the box below. So yeah, I hope everybody is having a totally awesome Labor Day weekend, and I hope to see you back here for the next part of the series. Bye.